Hey, is this working?
Yeah. What's going on, man?
There we go. Yeah, I decided on I had it coming out of my speakers instead of my earphones. Uh, can I still hear you on my earphones?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, it's working. Yeah, what's going on with me? Well, I watched like a 2 hour sort of live stream of a guy playing a game called Hitman 3, and he's like really into it. He's one of the creators I follow, and so then I decided to try out that game, and I like it so far. The I don't know if I've ever played exactly this game before, like Hitman 3, but it's pretty impressive. Like the environments have like a lot of people in them. You can like steal people's clothes, like to disguise yourself as like staff member or guard. You can like knock people out and hide them. And like the level I just played, you're sort of like high up in like a skyscraper in Dubai. You're at like a party, and you can like go into the bathroom. There's like a guy there. You can like take his like staff outfit. You can like go behind into like the staff areas and get like different equipment. And then my mission was to like poison this guy's drink, which I eventually did with some success. And it seems kind of cool. Like you can sort of like if you're standing in a crowd, it'll say that you're blending into the crowd, and people won't like really find you. And there's a lot. It
Yeah,
just feels like yeah, lots of different options and stuff to do in the environment.
yeah, I played that game a long time ago.
Yeah, I forget. Maybe I've played like Hitman 2 or the first one or something before, but this one now it feels more like there's enough like range and variety and like the balance, like when people see you and when they don't, and the ways that you have to like distract people. It all seems fairly well balanced so that you feel like there's like moments of tension and stuff.
Nice. Start keeping busy with a game. And I've been trying to not play games. I've packed the system up, trying to make it difficult, right? To break the habit of playing games when I get bored.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
having like as many other activities lying around as possible.
yeah, so
Physically.
I put
Yeah.
I put things out like the journal or the books I want to read. Or next thing is to take the batteries out of the remotes. But yeah, no, it's working on some better habits and trying to finish up the actual book there, Atomic Habits, and apply what I've learned. So it seems to all come down to shaping your environment, changing your environment so that you can form better habits, and then actually doing the things that you want to do on a regular basis, even if you don't have motivation or you get bored of it. And that's the thing is like you get bored of it, you got to keep giving her. But then it's like the habits that you're trying to form, do they align with who you are, your strengths, what you're passionate about? So it's like
Mm.
there's so many different variables. And I suppose the question is like, why do I want these habits? What is it I'm trying to achieve? So
Yeah.
a lot of my habits are lifestyle related, have better health. But then there's like other habits I'm looking at forming too, like monthly accounting practices so that taxes are easier, and so I have an appreciation of where all the money's going. Then there's other habits too, breaking some of the bad habits that I have.
Yeah, I always try to find ways to feel more in control and not like have more control, but just like the basics. Yeah, like the like where is money going? What am I doing with my time? I want to feel like I'm the one deciding that, and then I
Hmm.
build habits, Like yeah, and then it comes yeah, it's like I want to control what I'm doing, like what my habits are, and what how much time I have to do the habits or when I do them. But yeah, it does feel like there's some kind of like our personality is there, and if you push too hard against like who you truly are or what you truly enjoy, then there's like a resistance almost, and it's kind of a question like, can you can you really can you transform yourself a lot, into a different person, or is it somewhat like a discovery process, just finding out what do we like to do, and then just letting ourselves, like giving ourselves permission to do that in a healthy way or something.
And being okay with how you are and who you are. And that's the thing is, a lot of people aren't able to do that because we're constantly comparing ourselves to others. That fucking ripped, sexy movie star with all the long hair, or
Mhm.
I don't know. It's probably even more difficult for women because they're bombarded with what the ideal female body should look like, and you know, people tend to think that they can tell women how to look and how they dress. Like I just seen an example today where men overstep, and I hear it, and I'm just like, this is bullshit. Like no one would ever tell me or ask me where I am or what I'm doing or what I'm wearing or they wouldn't
Right.
be in my business like that. But it seems like for women, I never realized this before. It's like everybody's like up in their grill kind of thing. And I guess what I'm getting at is you could try to be happy with yourself, but then everything around you is telling you that you're not good enough because the advertisings are portraying a lifestyle that if you own their product. So like it's all psychology. And clever people know how to create that. Even if we didn't have that want before, they'll create that want in us because of their advertising. And when we're exposed to beautiful people, perfect people all the time, it's hard not to feel inadequate. Because really, I think
Yeah.
deep down, what we want is praise. We want to be accepted, which is part of our programming. And so it's, I guess, the question I ask is, why can't we just be happy with ourselves? And kind of answered it, but knowing what is causing the issues, why can't then we avoid the issues and then learn to love ourselves for who we are and be okay with it? And I guess that comes down to changing our environment and what we're exposed to. So if you're stuck in suburbia and you're working the 9 to 5 and you're in the rat race, good luck trying to escape. Good luck trying to find
Yeah.
balance and happiness. I don't see it happening. I mean, I would say I'm a pretty resilient dude, and I mean, I've hit rock bottom, and I'm constantly like picking myself off the ground, trying to get ahead. I try and I try, and then I can't. The system's made in such a way where it's tough to get ahead, and it's all about spending everything that you have in order to keep up with others. And the only reason why you know what others have is because you're exposed to it, whether it be through commercials or your community. So it's just like, in my mind, these little pockets that we have created, that we live in, that everybody lives in, they're like hamster cages to me. And I want to get the fuck out. I want my own existence on my own terms, form the habits and the lifestyle that I want because it brings me joy. Because it's great, because it's nice. Like I can see my ideal lifestyle right now. Back on Vancouver Island, I got my condo for a year as I figure things out because I have to boot the tenant out, and then I got to sell the place eventually. But I see myself living at the base of the mountain, going up to the resort. They charge what, 60, $70 a month to access their facilities. I get to work out every day. There's a salt pool, salt hot tub. Summertime, there's a bunch of parties going on. From there, I can choose to climb up the rest of the mountain to the top, come back down, because you can drive up or you can walk up the mountain. And then I got a motorcycle I can zip around, go to my favorite coffee shop, have some goodies there, head over to the ocean, go to a yoga class, fit some productivity in there somewhere, but like just living the good life.
Yeah, that's like it's hard to like that sounds really great, that lifestyle. It's always hard though to pick something in isolation because I feel like that ideal lifestyle, there'll need to be like people like some people around that you're friends with that you communicate, perhaps like a sense of, that you're not just doing that ideal lifestyle in isolation. Like hopefully, there'll be a couple people you meet up with at the yoga class or someone like perhaps you hike with occasionally. But like that's the hard part to guarantee, is that like you set up that ideal lifestyle, and I I always feel like then it's sort of, you do that until you sort of feel lonely, and then I guess you got to tweak certain things to just kind of find like where are other people at, and how do you pull in those people, and then the eventual sustainable lifestyle is like some parts of what you described, and then other parts are like the concessions you make so that you can hang out with like the groups of friends that are around. And
Yeah.
so I guess, yeah, it's sort of like there's like a target, and then where you land is slightly off, but somewhere in there.
My plan is to import my friends and people that I like to come visit, share the lifestyle with them, ship them back kind of thing. Like that's the idea. And not just like my friends and family that I know, but also, set up a side gig where I create that experience for people. Burn them out, show them the island, go for a backpacking trip, go climb a mountain, whatever.
And there's actually a mountain that has like, what did you say, like $60 a day or a month for?
Yeah, there's Bear Mountain
What is it?
Resort. Yeah, there's a whole big hotel, huge golf course, and kind of like wraps around sort of like this plateau around the mountain, and then there's Goldstream Provincial Park that you kind of go down and you get into like this rainforest, and you start at the bottom and you can work your way up and eventually scale the mountain that way. But yeah, driving up to the top or near the top where the resort is, it's not at the top. It's just like you're getting to the peak and where it's like more rocky and stuff. Uh, yeah, there's like a resort there, and it's open to locals for somewhat affordable price. It might even be up now.
Hmm.
They wanted $40 for a drop in. I was just like, yeah, okay, that's insane.
Yeah, that's surprisingly decent price.
Well, $40 for one session to drop in. So I mean, for a gym, that's too much
Hmm.
in my mind. But yeah, the monthly membership was more affordable. It's it's getting a little bit crowded on the island. I remember there's been a lot of changes in the last 10 years. I prefer 10 years ago. It wasn't as built up. And that's the problem with, best kept secrets. They need to be kept. Everybody's talking about it. Even I'm talking about it. But they're not going to touch Thetis Lake. They're not going to touch the mountain, the path that I take. They can't. They can't get rid of that. But more people, more vehicles, more traffic. So it's just now knowing the times. Like the idea is to get away from the traffic of Ontario when you're in Durham region, because it is ugly. Like it.
Hmm.
I mean, I get stuck in the traffic sometimes, seeing friends and family. I'm just like, this is why I want to leave. This is fucking bullshit. But then when I was on the island in the summertime, yeah, I was stuck in traffic a couple times. And I was like, wow, okay, I can't seem to escape traffic no matter where the fuck I go.
Yeah, that's what seems like it's gonna becomes a reality. And I'm expecting self-driving cars to just amplify the amount of traffic. Even if we get to just not focus on driving, we still are in the car for perhaps longer.
Yeah, which is okay if you have podcasts or whatever. I mean, you're learning while you're chilling, I guess.
Yeah, sort
No,
of like a
it,
future where everybody's just always inside a tiny mobile office, like driving somewhere, and rarely do we get to our destination. It's just like constantly being inside of a little capsule, which is not so bad, I guess.
yeah, it's not ideal, and the island's expensive, right? It's not cheap. I'll have enough to be comfortable, but yeah, even getting a mobile home or an RV, like this 3 times as much. So I'd have to go to Alberta and see if I can find something cheaper there. Tap into the family that I have there. So I wanted to go like with a RV and be remote that way.
Yeah. I guess is there any like empty lots for sale that you could put a mini home on,
Yeah, I mean they're
but they're still expensive?
they're scarce, and they're going to
Yeah.
be expensive because of the scarcity.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean there's enough money there. So, best bet's to go north. I mean, I want to be in the Machosen area, but yeah, I might have to go north. You could always get lucky if you got your feelers out there and you can get it before it comes on the market. And I'll have a year at least. I can figure out something else. I'm not keeping the condos. I'm going to sell them. And just sit on the cash for a bit because condos are a waste. And I got to wait till the housing prices drop because they're just not. They don't make sense in Canada. And we talked about this before, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than Japan, I don't know anywhere to buy a house that
J-
people can afford.
Japan's not affordable.
Well, I think Japan's the only affordable place I've heard of. I don't know what's going on there. I think there's a thing where like people live with their parents and people live where they work. Like when you get a job as like a server in a restaurant, you get a little apartment like above the restaurant. And I think
Oh,
that means that perhaps not a lot of people need to go out and buy a house, which means like the houses in Japan are affordable relative to like where everywhere else we've seen.
hmm. Well, the States is more affordable. 3 times more affordable, but then again, it's the States, so
Then
lots
Canada.
of lots of opportunity in the
Mhm.
States, but it's the States. How do we get in, right? So I've seen ways
Right.
to do it. Companies are offering services that get you in the door, build a real estate portfolio there, and I am interested. This would be the time to do it now that the U.S. economy has a soft landing, so and it hasn't gone into a recession. There's a chance that rates will go down, so maybe I should have gotten in just before the soft landing was confirmed. But then interest rates continued to go up, well, then that just would have hurt me and my bottom line. So you better get in sooner than later. Yeah, I was looking at a real estate deal. Um, a commercial buy, renovate, rent, relist kind of thing over a 5-year period, a BRR. And when you look at the contract, there's like hundreds of pages, not even exaggerating. And you start reading hundreds of pages of variables of things that can go wrong and affect your payout. It doesn't really seem like that great of an investment. So what I'm getting at is, well, U.S. because it was a deal in the U.S. Well, the U.S. is better than Canada for building a real estate portfolio. Some deals are better than others. So it's
Yeah.
like it's important to be able to have control over your money and what happens with it. If you hand it over to somebody and they can say legally, I can use your money and not give it back to you and go bankrupt, then that doesn't seem to be like a good idea.
Yeah, it's advantage of stocks being you can take the money out and in small quantities like whenever.
Yeah, it's all virtual though. I guess as long as the system's working and we can trust our currency, then yeah, it can work. But there's chat about the U.S. government going bankrupt, and the day that happens, oof.
They just declare bankruptcy.
Well, they can't. They can barely pay the interest on their, was it $22 trillion loan? I have to look
Yeah,
that up
I've
again.
heard. I feel like that's like an extremely complicated issue that is very like nothing simple will happen to it. I feel like the stuff I've heard is like essentially that's what inflation is. Like the way they pay off that debt is by quote unquote like printing new money, which like devalues regular money, but that's like some intentional slack in the system, and that's like I feel like perhaps that is indefinite. Like there was something about like China, like something like we owe a bunch of money to China, and people say, well, at some point they could just say, okay, America has to pay them back. And the way we would do that though is by just like devaluing our own currency. But at the same time, to do that, we'd be giving them like American dollars, and thus ensuring that like the American dollar remains like some kind of standard. And of course, like China being paid in American dollars would also want our currency. Like, if China all of a sudden holds a bunch of American dollars, now they have an interest in seeing that currency be stable and not, if we just pay off our debt to China and then go bankrupt, that's not good for China. So that bond of that debt owing wants China would want to see guarantee our survival almost in that sense. And that's like it's almost like a better deal than if they're totally separate, we don't owe them anything, then they would want to devalue our currency. And so maybe it's almost like it's at the same time that it's like good and bad or something, and it's just like balanced. And then all it means to us is there's a rate of inflation that sometimes is crazy, sometimes is not. And maybe that's kind of like, it's hard to say that any piece of that is like really terrible or something.
Yeah, it could be a bigger plan to remove the U.S. as a world superpower.
Yeah, that seems true.
One second. Japan owns 1.1 trillion. China owns 859 billion. United Kingdom owns 668 billion. Belgium 300 plus billion, and Luxembourg 318 billion. Interesting. And there's another thing I've discovered too. A bunch of countries are trying to create their own form of currency based off of gold, like we used to have. And the idea is to have a currency separate from the US dollar, backed by actual value. And then if that's the case, and the US can no longer service its debt, and the US dollar becomes worthless, it wouldn't really matter at the end of the day. Because if, let's say, the intent was to crash North American economy, then that would be mission success.
Yeah,
You
and
would
the gold
fall
would be
into,
the backup.
yeah. Well, if they moved over to their currency and stopped using the U.S. dollar, then the U.S. would be fucked.
Yeah, the thing I heard about like a fixed currency, like if you state that like there'll never be more than X amount of dollars, and that's guaranteed by like a physical amount of gold, then there's issues where it's like let's say there's a food shortage, and you don't have enough like physical gold to buy the food, then there's nothing you can do. Like the only thing you can do is break the court. Like you could declare the gold standard done and then just print more currency and use that to buy food, and that would get you into debt with other countries, I guess, but at least you'd get the food sort of thing. So that's like one issue with like the
That's what
fixed.
happened in the States. They wanted to fund the war effort. I forget what it was,
The
1950 or
second thing
70.
is wars. Yeah, that's an interesting thing because like yeah, the only way to keep a war going once you run out of gold is just by breaking that gold standard and just funding with infinite money. And then there's like a problem though where then the war can actually last forever. Like neither side has an incentive to end the war because they can just keep printing money and keeping it going. And so it's actually like maybe I was actually thinking that like let's say you're running a country and all the rich people take all the gold and then the poor people can't afford food and you sort of have this shortage. I feel like you could solve that maybe by like temporarily raising tax to redistribute the wealth so that everybody is again above the line where they can afford food. And like instead of printing new money, you like sort of just seize the access money from the richest people and temporarily use that to pay for the food for the poor, and then maybe you just like you're in debt, like you maybe there's some repayment plan to the people that you seized the money from, or maybe it gets like excused after a certain amount of time. But I feel like maybe that addresses this problem of flexibility or something.
So I'm looking up right now which country has the most gold.
Yeah, I wonder.
It says
It would be neat to see a graphic of like where all the gold is.
it says the US, but then it says other countries.
All the gold that we had, what did we even do with like after the gold standard ended? We just had this pile of gold. What do we even do with that?
I don't know.
I guess actually gold, there's a tiny bit of gold, I think, inside old computers at least, because they needed it for some like component. They needed like its exact level of resistance or something, but it's just like a little tiny piece of it.
So Canada produces gold, but it's saying that we don't have a gold reserve. United States has the most. Germany, Italy, France are like combined gets close to what the United States has. So these countries are trying to create a currency using the gold standard, yet the United States has the most gold. I am now wondering what would happen because, if the U.S. went bankrupt, it loses credibility. Loses credibility, that affects stocks and bonds, I'm sure. Like people will stop trusting the stock market. Then what? Country goes bankrupt, but yet it still has 8,133 metric tons of gold in reserve. So how's a country bankrupt if it still has gold and precious metals and shit? In my mind, can they really claim bankruptcy? Are they going to do that when they have this sitting in reserve? Why would they?
I guess
They
if
wish.
you don't you, if you claim bankruptcy, then all your like debts are excused, but then there's like a close analysis of like all the assets you have and the people that you owe your debt to, they get to take anything they want of value that you have, and maybe they have to leave you with like a little bit for to sustain your own life or whatever, but it gets like I guess it gets clawed back by whoever the creditors, I guess in this case.
I don't know. I never really looked into it.
I heard that like there was a guy that lost like a massive lawsuit. He was like kind of almost a billionaire, and he had this company, and after like he basically the court decided like he has to give all his money away. But the rules were that like he as an individual gets to keep like one house and like enough money to find his basic needs, but then like until his debt is repaid, which are like billions of dollars, he all his access money that's not needed for his own mortgage pay or like payments or whatever,
You
or
shouldn't have
food
a
or
mortgage at that point in time.
yeah, I think it was like he gets to keep like one house that's like paid off and then basic money, but then people like watch him to make sure he's not like any of his savings or whatever just go to the debt repayment. But there's like this trick where like if you like the guy who owned like WeWork, like he was like a regular person, then by owning WeWork for a period of time, he became like a billionaire. And there was a lot of deals where like he in the contracts it was like he's going to get paid 200 million, he's going to get paid 300 million, like for different reasons, and that became like his personal money as he was getting paid by the company. And then he left the company eventually, and now we work the company is totally bankrupt. And like that means like a lot of people are not getting paid back for their office space or whatever, or any money the company owns will be used to like give back to the shareholders who had the stock when it went bankrupt or something. But then the original owner who became like a billionaire off of WeWork, he's totally like free. Like all the money he got paid is just his, and he left, and so he gets to he's like totally separate from any of the bankruptcy proceedings. But it is a strange situation where like you create like a business, you become a billionaire because of the business, and then the business goes bankrupt. And obviously like surely part of the reason is because you skimmed off like billions of dollars from that business. But like when the business goes bankrupt, you just get to keep like all your individual wealth that in some sense could have been used to keep the business going. And so you're kind of like you basically stole that money from the people that like bought your stock, and then you just took a bunch of payment and then like tanked the company and pay them back a small amount.
Or
It
nothing.
seems like yeah, like yeah,
Basically,
however it shakes out. Yeah.
yeah, no, you own stocks in the company and it goes bankrupt. Pretty sure you can be left with nothing. So the investors are the last ones to get anything. So that's the risk that we take
Yeah.
when we invest in an individual stock. So when they say diversify, they're like, don't put your entire life savings into one company. You never know what will happen. Some people, I think, did that with Norton, and then it was doing really
Norton.
well.
Oh, the antivirus thing.
I don't know. They had a big campus on Carling campus that the military ended up, the Department of National Defense ended up buying
Right.
up. But yeah,
Yeah,
Nortel.
that story. Yeah, Nortel. The story is like they had like such a monopoly on the market and like this technological advance, and then it turned out like China was like spying on them a lot, and people started telling them like China's like stealing all your files, and they didn't like upper management like didn't address that at all, and then all their secrets got stolen, and eventually then like yeah, China like produced hardware using their technology and kind of became dominant, and then they were not relevant at some point. Like I forget what exactly the shift was, but they certainly didn't take any measures to protect their secrets, I guess.
And the people who put all their money into that company
Yeah.
got fucked. So I heard quite a few people have done that. A lot of people have done that. And
Yeah,
it's just
Enron. I think
Enron.
Enron was like a big company in the States that same thing happened. Like the executives walked away with a lot, and the employees and the shareholders like got nothing when it exploded.
So moral of the story is you become an executive. Executives are paid a lot.
Yeah, that's back to the rat race that we were talking about. Uh, like yeah, like a single day of being an executive, you already have enough money to retire, and so then the immediate question is like, these people are surely they're done. Like after a day, a month, like a year's salary, they could just quit and retire. But they never do. They always like hang around until the legal proceedings, and then they like negotiate their way out of that, and then they are like retire, like shamed into retirement. But really, the way to win is like just cross that boundary. You know, as soon as you cross that boundary where you can sort of retire or whatever, you can just exit the system, and you don't have to like make it even that big or whatever, where you don't have to
Yeah,
grind for years to like, yeah.
but to be brought in as an executive, you got to have credibility. You got to have the backing, unless it's your company that you formed. But yeah, executives are, just apply to be an executive off the street, unless you've been one before. So maybe if
Yeah, it
you're an
seems,
executive
yeah.
in the military, a general in the military, you might be able to land one of those jobs. But
Yeah.
that's government, not private sector.
Yeah,
So
either way, to break through that boundary, I think like that's where you sort of you got to like maybe some people are born with like the executive habits, which are not even great habits for a human being to have, but like maybe some people can train those habits into themselves, but then it's that question of like, just figure out what the 7 habits of executives are and then train them into yourself, but that like changes yourself, and then you're not like, maybe you win and you become an executive and then you get the money and quit, but I feel there's damage done to like your personality and your like creative spirit along that process, that it's sort of almost like you're taking the money and you're giving up part of yourself, and that's probably not a trade that you end up like really feeling good about.
never really thought about it.
Yeah, whenever I sort of see it, like when I see people operating on that level, they don't seem like natural casual people that are just enjoying life. They seem like they always have like an agenda, and they're thinking politics, and they're like shaking the right hands. And it's not, it's like, I don't think that they go home at the end of the day and they just relax and return to their a normal human being. Like I think they've crossed some boundary where they're always like making phone calls and negotiating things. And that, I think that extends to their whole life. And then even when they retire, I feel like they've forgotten like who they were or something, or they've lost like the passion of just being a human in the world or something like that. They're like too like money, like money is their one metric or something, and they can't think outside that.
Yeah, and the human body can only handle so much stress.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's accumulative and will manifest as disease one way or another. Living like that, I don't know, it's a lot. Not everybody's made for it. And the
Yeah, I
world's
don't,
becoming
and then
very,
yeah, I wonder if anyone's made for it.
the world's very, very complex. I mean, you would have to not be normal. I don't know if CEOs are normal.
Yeah, maybe they can just like tolerate it for long enough that it looks like they're built that way, but then it catches up to them eventually or something. But like maybe not until they're like 70, 80. Like, but even then it's like, what's the point at that point? Like you can just, like if you're like a CEO till death, then you've never really lived life outside of that CEO. Like the point of, yeah, it's like they've mistaken the game that we're all playing to try to get to retirement as the actual like retirement itself, and they just stay in, I guess, it's sort of like a cage. Like they've dominated the cage and they're staying in it because that's where they feel comfortable, and there's no reason for them to ever feel to leave the cage, but that's why they'll just be trapped there, even though they have like a palace inside the cage.
Hmm. Yeah, I heard somewhere that there's a little bit of sociopath in every CEO. Kind of would have to be in order to deal with what they
Yeah.
deal with. I'm just thinking about it all. It's like our civilization, society values performance, and people who have performed and are the geniuses get all the attention, and they become celebrities in their own way. And we look at it and we might like that ideal, but I couldn't imagine always being on the spotlight. That's not my personality type. Like I wouldn't
Yeah.
enjoy that. I mean, even the basic social functions of being an officer were, I don't know, draining to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I found that too. I really didn't like it.
But then at the same time, it's like when you're constantly going through that crap, you really appreciate the time off. Just
Mm.
the extremes, though, the amount of anxiety and stress that I was always under. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's a gene thing or if it's because of the way I was raised or what, but it wasn't for me. It was a good experience.
Mm.
I won't live my life wondering what it was like. I mean, I've had the fancy dinners and the big balls and stuff, and it's okay. But you can have a good time with just a small group of friends.
Yeah.
Heck, I even have a
Yeah.
better time. Mm.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad that's an important thing. I'm glad that like we had the experience to see what big fancy things are like and to know that like you don't feel it doesn't complete you, to attend one of these things and really and then contrast that with a small group of friends feels right and better and more energizing.
Absolutely.
The like you had mentioned in the beginning that a lot of the movies we watch are about like they train us to think in this sort of way of like however they do. And I want to see more movies. Like I think I've seen a few. I can't remember that off the top of my head, but like just movies about a person like realizing that they already have the stuff they want and then just being at peace with that and not having to do anything amazing or heroic or like drastic or not being a genius or winning their way to the top. Just a person just like sort of over the film encountering some of these ideas that we're encountering and then in the end coming to like a nice revelation about it all and then just feeling at peace. And maybe there's some dramas out there. I'm trying to think of like films that have spoke to me in that way but that's the kind of stuff that I want to create as well is like even just like short YouTube videos that's just like me talking over footage and just telling a story like or maybe use AI generated imagery, just tell a story of like a person who wanted to achieve something and how they tried to achieve that thing and then they didn't achieve that thing but then they ended up finding a way to happiness despite not achieving this amazing thing that they originally envisioned. They just realized that it's not needed and like maybe they come to terms with not having everything they want and then they realize whatever they have is good enough and actually what they want. And just because imagine like like a good director, a good actor like putting together a film like that and then we get to watch it and it would just really be a validating, like if they did it right it would be so validating to just like sit there for 2 hours and watch this play out and then at the end you just feel like you've been like that you've been seen by the film, like it's showing the journey that we want to go on and then that it's all going to be okay. And that would be a nice piece of content to watch.
I wonder if something like that exists. We're just not aware of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to like search in my mind about different stuff I've seen. I saw one, it was like a Vice YouTube video. It was like a former K-pop star that became a monk and they were like it was a lot of footage of like them as a monk and then they would show like the old like photos and they talked about like their old career as like this super famous like K-pop idol where all these fans were bombarding them and then they at some point they made a decision to like shave their head, become a monk and then just live peacefully like and it seemed like they had really found who they were and but like but then they talked about like the dark side of like fame and all these ways that people abuse you, and so then you could sort of see from their perspective like how badly they wanted to exit this world where they were the focus of attention and just become like a certain, I don't know, whatever monks consider themselves to be, like a like just worshiping Buddha or being like a servant of the environment or
Well,
being
they
peaceful.
have an ideal lifestyle. They simplify
Mhm.
things, and they have community, and they have disciplines, martial arts, skills, whatever it is that they practice. They definitely have physical activity each and every day. I don't know what they eat or what their sleep is like, but
Mm.
it's a simpler way of living. It's just, I don't know if it's solely for men or if women can do it. But I can tell you, if it was just for men and there's no women around, that would not be balanced in my mind. It'd be nice to be
Yeah,
able to have like
this
a
yeah.
something like that, but co-ed, where you don't need to shave your heads, but you can simply wear a robe and everything else applies.
Yeah.
I think that'd be
I wonder
nice.
what the shaving, there must be answers to all this. Like, what is the shave? What is the purpose of the shaving? Like, maybe, like, I feel like hair is a symbol of like, because we're so obsessed with our hair, we want it to look a certain way. It's like a symbol of like vanity, and we feel that we own our hair, and it's our like possession, and that if it gets shaved off, we've lost something. And I feel like a lot of being a monk is like deeply meditating on how, you know, it shouldn't, like, it's sort of like we prove to ourselves that we're above this need to look a certain way or to something or have an identity. And by like I feel like the conclusion would be made like, you got to shave off the hair to like really appreciate having nothing, like having no possessions, having no fashion items on you or something like that. It seems like a thing that would be hard to like do everything else except for have this one, like, like fancy gelled hair or something. And then people would wonder like if you're depending on that for some kind of thing.
Yeah, I was one of the vain ones,
Or
and
the
then I
other way,
had,
like there's those cultures that like never cut their hair, and then I guess that's a way to it as well. Like your hair just does what it does. You never print, you never style it, you never trim it, and that's more like accepting what happens rather than trying to control it.
yeah. Female monks are known as nuns,
Hmm.
and I don't know if they're Sikhs or who. There's a religion that, or people that do not cut their hair. Long hair symbolizes their spirituality and connection to God. It gives them comfort and makes them feel part of a community that shares their beliefs. The turban, which holds the hair, is
Right.
described by some Sikhs as their crown, reflects their pride in their faith. Yeah, so Sikhs.
Yeah, that's something I haven't seen in a while is a person wearing a turban. I actually, like, there was always like growing up there was always like a student in my class or something that was wearing one, and then in the military people were wearing one. Since moving to the States, I don't think I've seen a single person wearing a turban,
Hmm.
and that's kind of weird.
Yep. In Canada, there's lots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably one of the main differences in the people that I meet is that more people in Canada are wearing turbans and almost no one. I guess occasionally I see like a person wearing like a hijab, but very few men are wearing a turban. I don't know if that's even the same religion. I assume it is.
What's that, sorry?
Maybe, probably not though. Like is the people that wear turbans, is the female turban a hijab or something? Probably not. I'm assuming probably not. There's probably like a very nuanced like distinction or something.
I saw a female turban and it just didn't make sense to me.
Hmm. Yeah, there's like the hijab that's like the cloth over the hair, and then there's like the burqa, which is like the full everything except for your eyes are shown.
Yeah, no, but I seen like a straight up like male turban on
Yeah.
somebody, and that threw me off. Um, yeah, I don't,
Yeah, I always wondered like
they want a clear visual
yeah.
that they're Sikh as well, so they use the turban.
Hmm. Seems like a something that would be like logistically difficult. Like there's just like a lot of things I would do like wear, I don't know, wearing a hat or like being in the wind or being in the rain or like just going to like an amusement park or something. It feels like there's a lot of situations where it would be inconvenient to have like a thing on my head, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe there's just like a few things you can't spontaneously do that you would just accept.
It's all interesting stuff. I don't think I'm gonna become a monk, but I am interested in what it is that they do. Interested enough to learn more. All
Yeah.
these different religions and way of living, and people are just trying to figure it out. I think, and I see religions as service providers, really. Like we may have talked about this before. I've talked about it with somebody else. But I mean, they provide a service. They provide community. You pay a little bit of money, tribute, whatever the official term is, and yeah, they have their manual, their truth. Every religion seems to have their own scripture, and it
Yeah,
seems
I
like
definitely like I like the idea of spirituality. It just a lot of the religions are way like overreaching and overpowered. I need like I want like a modern monk thing where like I still live in an apartment and I do all the things I do, but then I have some principles that I follow or I follow patterns or something like that. And I use like the teachings, the learnings of some of these things, but not go like fully into the worship or the belief system or something.
yeah, I think the best of the religion with regards to like
Yeah.
lifestyle and values, but not necessarily like drink the Kool Aid kind of thing where you're yeah.
Mhm. Almost, yeah, like it like a lot of religions are like these tax-free entities where you like it's part of your like identity or something. But I want like a business version of it where like I do pay like a upfront subscriptions fee and the business owes me certain things and the stuff like the service that's provided is a service that helps me feel like spiritual and they deliver a very like quantifiable value to me and I pay them money on a fixed term and I want that sort of relationship rather than like donate as you want but they're going to pressure you and like it's very gray like what they owe you and what you owe them or something.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you can sign a pad and they'll just take from your debit card, man. I thought I saw that already. So
But
yeah.
I want them to like promise me things they'll give me like certain like a set number of hours of instruction and coaching or some diet like some thing like access to some facility that is cleaned based on the money they take in
Hmm.
and just have a bit more like organized structure to that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe they do.
Yeah.
Maybe there are programs in churches. You have to go to one to see, I guess, or go to a website.
Yeah, it feels too creepy because their
Hmm.
like their websites are like it's like a website made by a volunteer and a volunteer maintains the schedule and it's like all like it's just like I just want to pay fixed money and have like a customer service person I can call, to get like info or something. Or I want like to pay some fee and have like access to like several mountain resorts with like schedules and I want like issued robes issued.
Yeah. Oh, I got a lot to think about. Thanks, man. Got some pondering to do,
Yeah.
some learning to do.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my copy of Atomic Habits ship.
Okay. Yeah, it's a
So I haven't
solid
had it.
book.
Yeah.
It's a lot
Yeah.
to apply, and I used to do some of the stuff that it was saying. I used to use my little kitchen board, and I would track when I would do my runs, my strength training, and I would write it down, and that felt good. It's you do something and it works, and then you stop doing it, and then you don't really see the value of what you were doing until, well, you read about it. At least I find.
Mm.
And that I realize now the weight that had. I mean, I really looked forward to putting my numbers on the board, simple numbers, but I was able to track progress each week. I was able to track last week's project, and that's all I would compare myself to is last week. So I'd
Yeah.
have like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all days of the week. I'd have what my activities were, my running speed and time, and then I'd have like if I did core or strength and how many minutes I did, and then just as I would overlap. So I'd come back to Monday. I would then see what I've done, and then I would just like put in my new time. And the idea is I either maintain or I grow. But if I go down, well, oops, I don't want to go down, and I rarely did. So it was a way to keep me accountable, and that worked.
That's
And
good. Yeah.
another thing too is like sort of like this ongoing ledger or notes pad of the serious decisions that you made in your year during the year. So for instance, like me, I decided to buy Bitcoin during the bull run there before the announcement, and I took a loan, $30,000, moved it over, bought half a coin ish, thinking that it's going to keep going up, and it probably will go up. But my reasoning in my mind was, okay, if interest rates maintain as they are or they go down, the coin's going to increase in value, which is not what happened. What happened was it maintained, and then it kind of fluctuated a little bit, but didn't increase in value anymore.
Right.
So basically, I've just incurred all these fees for buying this coin because it's pretty expensive to buy on Well Simple. I need to find a better platform. And this is a lesson learned. I realized that, oh yeah, people use Bitcoin, gold, and silver as a way to counter inflation. Well, we're not really dealing with crazy inflation right now. It's been brought down, which is why the banks have sort of slowed down, stopped the interest rate increase, and eventually it'll start trickling down. And I took this action. I rushed it. Ideally, I would have bought the Bitcoin when I wanted to, but I've been trying to transfer money for the last 5 business days, and I missed out on $1,000 of growth. So I ended up taking that loan because I was able to get in and put it to my crypto wallet directly. And I took action. So a pro is that I took fucking action and I thought outside the box to make this happen. I didn't just accept the fact I have to wait 5 business days. I'm like, no, I want in, and I want it now. And I did something that was decisive, but I did it based off the wrong information. This decision could have cost me a lot of money, but it cost me a little bit, right, in interest and the transaction fees. But the gains could be huge. I didn't have all my facts straight, but I took decisive action. I've learned something new, and I also did something that I never would do. I would never just jump in on something like that.
Yeah.
I would wait, or I'd be overly cautious and completely miss the opportunity. And before, during COVID, when Bitcoin was surging, I bought not at the peak, but near the peak. But I didn't know anything. Like, I thought Bitcoin was an investment, like, for fuck's sakes. Like, that's how clueless I was. So I was like everybody else and took a loss because I bought way too late. I didn't learn from that. The only thing that happened was I feared cryptocurrency enough to miss the opportunity to buy at 21,000 per Bitcoin. So this is different. I pushed through the fear to try to get back into it. It may drop again a little bit, but as long as if the ETF initiative gets approved, then Bitcoin could soar to be like 100,000 per. So this is one of those decisions that I'm going to put down on this like ledger or this notepad of decisions that I've made, big decisions that I've made. What are the consequences? What are the lessons learned? And then review that at the end of the year. Because I think those decisive moments, those decisions that we make are really important and we shouldn't forget them.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's something that the book also sort of shows and recommends. So
yeah,
I like that. The whole idea of tracking. You don't track everything. You track the stuff that's important. And it's only by tracking and having marginal growth, like a 1% increase, whether it be like every day or each quarter, as long as you're working towards slight increases, I mean, that's how you're going to improve. If you don't take any action, or if you only take action sporadically, you're not going to get those consistent gains. And so, like Mr. Beast, he says, like, the way to get big is you just create 100 videos and you grow each time, and eventually you'll make a video that's good enough. It might not be the 100th video, it could be the 101st. You just keep going until you get to a quality, to a level where you get picked up. Because you're not, the likelihood of you doing a viral video with your first video is just, you can't bank on that. I think he had a really viral video in the start, and then he just wanted to duplicate that feeling. I don't know. I've heard mixed things about that. And some people just do have a viral video and just go, but that's not going to be the case for everybody. Right? So what really stuck with me was an example that was given with like this university course, photography or something. I think it was university. But the course was basically like, your entire grade is going to be based off of, for half the group, how many pictures they've taken. And then the other group is submit the best quality picture, one picture, and that will be assessed, and your grade will be determined off of that one picture. And in every case, the group that did the 100 pictures plus, they had the best photo at the end.
Right.
Because it shows like they took all those pictures and they grew each time to try to like, the different lighting, different angles, whatever. They ended up producing the best picture. So it's action that matters. It's not just doing the motions and thinking about it and, kind of blueprinting. It's actually taking action. And the people that just did the one picture, their pictures were just average.
Yeah.
They paled in comparison to the people that did the work. So it's all about repetition at the end of the day. So I found all that very neat, and I'm eager to put it into practice. And I'm actually doing it. Small little bits every day to get into the habit of doing
That's
it
good.
more consistently and, eventually increase. Like my workouts, they're not the full-fledged workouts every day. They're just a few exercises that take maybe 20 minutes. But the idea is to, even if I don't feel like it, do it. So anyway, man, I think we're good for time, yeah?
Yeah.
Thanks for the chat.
Yeah, thanks for the chat.
All right. Talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.